Every tool that we use for mindfulness can be used to put us to sleep. Every awakening instrument can be subverted to be used against us. It may be in balance in the human life to actually calm down at times and put ourselves to sleep, because we do need to sleep humanly. But while we're awake, we do not need to be sleeping. And yet that is what we are doing to ourselves with so many different tools, with media, with food, with drugs, with phones. We're becoming zombies. We're becoming the walking dead because technology is enslaving our minds. Our minds are stimulated by the technology, but our actual consciousness, our awareness is being reduced. It's diminishing in these practices, in these different, very unconscious practices. We are training ourselves every day to be less aware, less mindful, more automatic in our routines. We are becoming automatons. And so with hours a day spent on video games, social media, news, we are becoming less conscious. And I'm part of this. I'm not above this at all. I'm just seeing it, noticing it once again at the extreme level in which it is taking place. I had this dream this morning that I was, basically it was a copy of the movie Tenet, where time is being inverted, and I'm going through my last year and last several years in reverse, and noticing all the ways in which I was hurting my back while doing lifts that I didn't notice when I was doing them. And all this lack of mindfulness and these things that I was doing that were putting me to sleep, when I thought, oh, I'm waking up with this. Like, no, you're putting yourself to sleep with this. Don't you see? And so it's so tricky because media, for example, is potentially a great tool of enlightenment. It is a great tool of teaching. But most of us use it to go to sleep. Certain drugs, like psychedelics, are potentially great tools of healing and enlightenment. But most of the time, people use them for recreational purposes, which is a form of putting ourselves to sleep. It is a reduction of mindfulness. It is, when it's a party drug, it is no longer a tool of enlightenment. Sex, the oldest drug, if you will, is a tool of enlightenment, but we use it to put ourselves to sleep, to just drug ourselves so we can stop feeling the anxiety, pain, trauma, or whatever it is that we're carrying around with us. We're trying to escape all of these things instead of becoming mindful of them so we can actually handle them. Instead of becoming responsible for the society we've created, we are shutting our brains down so we don't have to deal with it. I mean, isn't that obvious if you really look at it? Look at climate change. Climate change, which, even if you don't believe in global warming being a man-made thing, even if you didn't believe that, look at the planet. Look at how dirty and screwed up we've made it. Just by the way we live, by the industrial way that we farm and cut land up for living and tug ships around using fossil fuels. It doesn't matter if the theory of man-made climate change is real. We are destroying our planet. It is morally bankrupt what we're doing. It's disgusting. And we're poisoning ourselves and killing thousands of other species. That much is clear. This is not going on without our contribution. This is a massive human moral crisis. And instead of noticing that that's what we're doing, we're putting ourselves to sleep. We're ignoring it. We're ignoring politics and how corrupt they've become. You know, I'm an idealist, and what that means is that I look at systems and I see the ideal form of them and I go, oh, isn't that beautiful? Wouldn't that be beautiful if it were completely idealized? If we reached our potential, wouldn't that be beautiful? Being an idealist does not necessarily mean that you ignore reality. But I think in some ways, perhaps I have been still ignoring reality. That when I think about the academic community, I think about this sort of idealized form of shared knowledge, of scientists all seeking the truth. And well, I still think that that's an element of this for many people, and that the system was set up in a way to do that. I think we all have to acknowledge that capitalism has seeped into every institution in human life and corrupted it to some degree, turned it into a for-profit game. And so while academics at their highest mind, the angels of their better nature, may be true truth seekers, I think that a lot of the publishing, of course, is corrupted by what's going to make me money, what's going to get me a grant from this pharmaceutical company or this big capitalist industry. So we're definitely taking away a lot of our integrity and truth-seeking because the capitalistic system is holding all the cards. It's holding all the power. And this strange idea that keeps hitting me over and over again about the banking system sort of holding us in place. The banking system is necessary, of course. We need banks. That's not an evil in and of itself. But when the banks are always charging interest and the banks are always loaning money, then they get richer while everyone else gets poorer. This principle has been well documented by Thomas Piketty, the French economist, that throughout history, there's this tendency for wealth to grow faster than labor's investments can ever regain money, unless you use certain systems against it. So the American middle class didn't exist that well until right after World War II, when we had created all these social programs during the Great Depression leading up to World War II. And then World War II allowed for a grand rebuilding of Europe by the United States, and that made us rich. And it was an anomaly of wealth upon which we've built an empire, a global empire. But that wealth didn't exist without those social programs, without the taxes on the rich being incredibly high. I'm not saying that taxing the rich is an economic policy that really works, but it's a way of helping build a middle class without constantly refilling the coffers of the wealthy more than anyone else. You have to have systems to play against the natural flow of economics, or you get lords and slaves, basically wage slaves. And Thomas Piketty documented how this has happened many times in history. Most of the time, this is the tendency, and society somehow works against it to brace to give the middle class a fighting chance. And we're at that point again. Since the policies have been eroded, we've seen a great division, a great split of the wealthy from the poor, and the middle class losing value over decades, losing income's lower relative to inflation. So we've got some issues here, and we're not looking at them. We're just going, oh, la da da da. Capitalism is great. There's no problem here. Communism is evil. It's like, well, yeah, communism is not something to be trusted for sure. But social programs have been in the U.S., have been in human civilization since the beginning. Forms of social care for your brother, for your fellow man, have been around forever. So it's not evil. It's part of our human tribal nature to care for one another. That's how we've succeeded as a species. Teamwork, shared risk, shared benefit. So we have a lot of issues that we need to confront right now, and society is riddled with the effects. It seems so obvious now, but we're not looking at them. We keep looking at our screens. We keep looking for distractions because we don't want to deal with it. It looks too big, too much to handle. It's just depressing, and I acknowledge that. It's a lot to handle. It is overwhelming. But if we don't deal with it, the only thing left is going to be some kind of police state or a revolution, or both. That's where we're headed if we don't deal with this, because human history bears that out. That's kind of the trajectory you get once you go so far in this pattern. It kind of squeezes you out. And so there's a lot of distrust in society today. And I think that a lot of it's misplaced, but it is real. There's a reason for distrust. And I think we need to deal with that. We need to really communicate with each other about where we're going as a society, as a culture, and how we're going to fix these problems that seem never ending.